Well, good morning, everyone out there in YouTube and Facebook land. We coming here from the May 3rd edition at the Father's House Church. That's right. We have our daily briefing, our Sunday briefing. I want to thank Jay and Luke again for doing worship this morning. Wish you guys could be here with us. The presence in here is really cool. Just a sweet, tender time in here. I'm enjoying it. Wish you guys could enjoy it as well, but hopefully sometime soon. Mark and I talked a little bit this week, trying to just catch up a little bit and talk. And one of the things the Lord has really been just kind of keeping me focused on and speaking to me about during this time is simply just the goodness of the Lord. And there are times your mind is so conditioned to gravitate towards maybe the things that aren't happening that should be happening, the things that we hope don't happen that we think may happen, but anything to your that's why they call it daydreaming or your brain wandering off, is because your brain has a natural tendency to want to go anywhere that it's not currently deposited or located, right? And that there's an opportunity on that side to go to the good side with it, but then there's also this kind of predisposition, or how we've been trained by society, to start to pick out the things that are wrong, the things that are warnings, the things that are potential pitfalls, the mistakes, the fears, all that kind of stuff. And it only takes a couple of moments, and this is one of the things we really talked about, is it only takes a couple of moments of going, okay, I'm going to pull away from all that stuff, and I'm going to simply take a moment to think about the goodness of the Lord in my life right now. And for those of you that have, walked with the Lord for any number of years or a considerable length of time, there are so many stories that if you allow yourself to go into basically his resume of faithfulness and trust that he's built with you, the success stories that you've had in your life with the Lord, if you start to focus on these things, it says think on these things, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's of good report. We have all these good reports in our file with the Lord, but sometimes, those things get clouded out or crowded out by the stimulus of what our senses is telling us is right here and what's available. But it doesn't take very long before, you may retreat to your room, you may go out in nature, you may find yourself just, out taking a walk, and all of a sudden, man, the goodness of the Lord smacks me in the face, and I know everything that I was just thinking about on the backside or the dark side doesn't matter at all because of this one moment where he wipes all that stuff away.
And we're preconditioned actually from childhood as we're coming in, our environment around us. Actually, Lisa, in a second, I'm going to get you to zoom in on the camera. She's trying to walk away from the video. There's all 6 of us in the room today, so we're doing well. So we're conditioned all the way down to my childhood. I started thinking about our conversation and the things that in my brain have been conditioned through my family, my parents, my life, history, society, and don't realize when my brain is on autopilot, the things it starts flipping through, the areas that it goes to, and it makes me unique, though. All those environments and all those things that have created the way I think makes me a unique person. But here's the difference. It's the fruit of the Spirit. It's the Lord. It's the Spirit of God. That's the mind of Christ that I'm wanting to really awaken to, because that is the part that puts me in union with Him. It's all of Him and all of me in concert together. Yeah. And when the concert's out of tune, it doesn't sound very good. But I wanted to do this for fun because I thought about this and haven't done this in a while, and because you brought up that great point of your brain can wander off on focusing on things that are not lovely, that are not true, that it's not the Spirit of God speaking the Word of God, renewing our minds. So I put this little exercise together, Stephen, for fun today to do something creative.
Visual aids, man. I like visual aids.
Yeah. So, Lisa, if you don't mind, just maybe zoom in on this for a minute, and Stephen, you can see it too. And I'm asking everybody out there, what do you see? And on this little dry erase board, it's a very small dry erase board. So What are you seeing right now? All right. And so if I was to take from the audience, from all three people out there, what do y'all see? A dot, a red dot, okay. All right. Well, this is a great exercise because this makes me think that if I go to that dot, I'm going to pretend like that dot is where my mind wants to go, but I also see a lot of white surface. And I think that's the kingdom of heaven. I think that's where I'm trying to get to is, what is God saying around the dot? And if we focus on that one dot, our minds will begin to start processing and get laser focused on that. We'll get tunnel vision. Mm-hmm. But this, all around it is the kingdom of heaven. This is where God is speaking. It's the white area that God wants to break through, but we often get caught up on just the dot. And in that dot, often is our own self-effort and strength, fear. You can put all you want into that dot. Anxiety will come from it because you're starting to take your mind off of the kingdom of heaven, off of what God says, which is the white area. God has much a bigger plan than that dot. That surface area is much bigger than the dot. But the enemy, or our minds, would love to make us focus on the dot. And then that would become our solution, whatever is in that dot. And it's not the true solution. It's not the truth. Does this make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So you can, in this picture, you can see how the Lord has to long suffer with us, right? And because he can be wanting to show you the shiny corners over here, or how the purple is, surrounding the whole thing, or whatever. But if we can't, or for someone else, maybe they can't get off the fact that there's a tiny little black mark in the midst of the white, right? If you're more of an OCD style personality or something like that, you might not be able to. The blemishes over here, you might think, man, we have to be without spot and without wrinkle. We have to be perfectly sanitized, and or the fact that I just touched this and you touched it. I mean, we could get hung up on this whole thing, right? But the point is, so the Lord is, if whatever he's trying to point out here, if we get fixated on something else, he has to long suffer with us and try to continue to meet us where we are in order to show us something different. And I just had to be honest, for my personality type, when someone says, man, look at this red dot, and I'm like, no, look at all this white, right? And they go, no, but it's the red dot, and I'm like, I don't care about the red dot because of all the white, right? Like if this was the enemy's forces, and then like in our Elisha example, of the servant, man, there's some enemies. Well, yeah, but there's all this, so this doesn't matter because it's surrounded by all of this good stuff. That's right. Let's not get hung up on this bad thing, right? And my death, my long suffering is being an optimistic style person. I look at this and think of all the ways that it can go right? So it's really difficult for me to be a good support person or a good friend to a person whose world is the red dot, right? And so then I need the wisdom of the Lord, the patience of the Lord, the long suffering. I need something supernatural to be able to go, okay, I'm going to go into the red dot with you, and I'm going to stay there as long as you need to be there.
Right. That's true. But a true friend.
But and so when you're conditioned to see all the white or how well it could work, right? Yes. If I'm going in thinking, what if things go right? And someone else is going in going, what if things go wrong? Then one of us has to make a choice, or we both have to make a choice to go towards each other. Or if that person doesn't have the ability in that moment to come out of the red dot, then I can either just say, get out of the red dot. Yes. It's white. Right? Or I can go, Lord, I don't understand why this person thinks that the dot is the only thing here. Yes. But I got to find a way to humble myself, to soften, to be sensitive to the red dot person and go into the red dot and inspire that there is something else out there. That's right. And so, much more. And so a lot of what, we're seeing, and that's just an individual, welcome to my moment of weakness. But yes, for those of you that know me, that is not a shock that I would have a hard time having, man, look at all the things that the Lord is doing. Well, look at what he's not doing. Well, okay, yes, that's true. I can see, and without...
I'm going to go ahead and put this up.
Yeah, you don't have to hold it up the whole time. But without, going into details that that, are not mine to share and related to other people, you could pretty well pick in this moment in any major area of my life. I have what humanity would consider legitimate reasons to be nervous, fearful, afraid, anxious, frustrated, angry, contentious, right? I have these rights as a natural human being.
And I can confirm that just because of our relationship, knowing you.
Right. So even if it wasn't on a personal level, we're all being challenged on, we feel an infringement of our rights right now.
Sure.
And this is our human right. This is our basic right.
Yeah.
Yes, this could be your dot, right? If you love the beach and then you get told you can't go to the beach,
right,
that is your red dot.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so, well, now I can't go to the beach. Well, I used to connect to the Lord at the beach. So therefore now I can't connect to the Lord, right? Like if you're not careful,
right,
you allow the thing that is your stumbling block or could become your stumbling block,
correct,
to all of a sudden take you out of this overall goodness of the Lord, that he has orchestrated your life and intertwined it on so many more levels deep than we understand.
Absolutely.
That even if there is a stumbling block here, is it possible that either we don't have to stumble over it,
right,
or that he's opening up another way to actually go around it, or
yes,
he's putting a tool in our hand to obliterate it before we get there?
Yes, and so I like the word when you said friend a minute ago, because helping that friend or someone, doesn't even have to be your friend, it could be a stranger. You could say something from the Lord that came right out of that heaven realm to that person, and they would take their eyes off the dot for a split second, and they go, oh, they just had an aha moment when we take them off the dot, when the Lord does that, and we capture the essence of the truth of what he's really saying to in our life. But the friend part of it, really, I don't mean to steer it too much, but I think
sure,
that's really a good spot, because you and I were talking yesterday, and I want to tell a story with this. So Stephen and I just catching up. He's gotten back in town, and we're sitting there catching up a little bit. And yesterday we're just talking, and honestly, we didn't call each other just to say, hey, what do you want to talk about tomorrow? It's just our normal, about every day or every other day, we try and catch up with each other. And he started sharing what the Lord was showing him and the goodness. And as I was talking to him, and I started sharing the same thing along those same lines, was friendship. Friendship with God, meaning that if he's such a true friend, he's not going to let you stay in the same condition you are if you're staring at the dot. It's not going to do you any good. He's trying to awaken us and show us there's a much bigger plan, a much bigger vision for our lives and for other people. He's the God that has ultimate supply, okay? So this is the God that has not just plan A and plan B. He is the plan, all right? So I'm talking to Stephen, and I'm going through the Food Lion. Took me a while to shop because I was talking to you,
Right.
And then I
Can't
finally
be as focused
yeah,
going down the
exactly.
one-way aisles
No,
and avoiding everyone.
No, but I definitely wasn't on the dot. I was just So I go to check out. I'm leaving in the parking lot, and I'm driving out, and we're still kind of talking. Is right before I pull out of the parking lot, and we started talking about friendship, and we started talking about how God is such a faithful friend to us. And what my heart's desire is to see in this hour, and this is what I feel like the Lord said to me, Mark, I really want family focus more than ever. Just really the church becoming even more. I want my family back. He wants his family back. And I started thinking about people and the people that I love, and walking through relationship with people being more important than a status or anything else that I can as a pastor. So to the point that I got to, over this whole time of slowing down, I realized I don't need a pulpit and I don't need an audience. I'm not there anymore. What I need is I just need to love people and give away God's love throughout the day, as he's showing me. Throughout the day, I'm living in the Lord, and I'm being able to give away his love with no hooks in it, just being myself throughout the day, and having people be able to see the Lord for a moment, so taking their eyes off the dot for the day, whoever that is. And so as we're talking about that and slowing it down, that we would actually get to a place where the church would not rely upon leadership anymore behind a pulpit or the senior pastor or whatever you want to say, but they awaken to a place in their hearts that the person right beside them God put in their life. Maybe it's their neighbor, maybe it's their coworker, who knows what it is, whoever God is putting in your life. And you're so faithful to God that you become faithful to that person as a friend. And as we're talking about this, I look into the parking lot and I look down, and what do I find? And now this is where you're going to have to pick up and give understanding. But you have to know there's a story, a backstory. When I met Stephen, and one of the stories he shared in church was about golf balls, and it was one of the most powerful messages on relationship that I've heard. And so I looked down in the parking lot, and there it is. This golf ball, number 4, is sitting in the parking lot as we're talking again. It's just, to me, another breadcrumb from God saying, yes, I'm just confirming I want my family back, and we're slowing down so you can speed up, God.
Yeah, I think, and what's cool about that is this has been probably a 5 or 6 year process where he originally said, I'm going to start teaching you things about me through finding these golf balls, and I'm like, what in the world, and,
Right.
And when I tell you that I've found golf balls in places that no golf balls should be, I promise you that that's the case, and even, in places like going to the Bahamas right after the hurricane, I found one at the distribution warehouse that was going to be used to be able to house stuff as a landing point in the States to go over to the Bahamas. I found one on the front, right next to the front steps in the planter there, and before we even made it to the Bahamas, just checking out this new logistics site, and then got to the Bahamas, and we're walking around one day in a torn up area, and I look down, and there's one right there in my path as we're walking, and there's this spot where it's just a constant reminder. That's the detail of the Lord breaking in to your environment and just letting you know, I'm still here, and I'm showing you things, and you're on the path, and this is all part of the discovery process. But even in that, as I've shared this story in different places, other people have had that same manifestation break into their life out of the relationship. So like Daryl in the Bahamas, Daryl Pender, he sent me multiple pictures since I told him that story and showed him the one. He was with me when I found the one in my path, like in the middle of nowhere. He's actually sent me a few pictures of him going to, fix a roof at somebody's house or something or whatever, and he's like, I found another one today, Right. And there have been other people in Charlotte and some different places that have said, man, in my path, look at what was there today. And it's not that the golf ball is anything, it's the Lord using a visible, tangible sign to bring you back to the fact that He's connected with you, you guys are walking out the relationship, and He is ultimately for your good. And so if you're there, He's there, and He's going to help you walk that thing out.
So I want to frame, just to condense it for people who have never heard the golf ball story, but the theme on that for you, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't want to botch it, was every time the Lord was going to show you golf balls, you would find broken ones, messed up ones, and each one you picked up was a person to Him.
Right.
That was going to be repaired, or He was going to do something with.
Yeah, it was all about the overall concept of Him playing this recovery shot with people that felt like they were too far gone, people that felt like they were too messed up to be used, all of that. I mean, if you think about, as a golfer, any blemish on the ball makes it a ball that you can't use in order to play well, right? So for all of us that, the older you get, the more you realize there is no one in this life that has escaped life for very long without some trail of carnage, brokenness, heartache, adversity, trial, and so it gives you an overall, number one, it gives you relief about yourself, right? Because you're not the only one that's struggling through hitting walls and bouncing off ditches and going through stuff, but it also gives you a compassion for the places that you've been or the places that you've seen your loved ones be. When you run into other people, you're like, man, I've been right where you've been, or I understand where you are, and trust me when I say that you can make it, because I've experienced it. And so when you find the Lord, you're never too far gone for the Lord to play back in, and so that the coming wave, if you will, or whatever term you want to use, of people that would begin to carry His nature in the way of loving other people, were these people that considered themselves to be disqualified, too far gone, kind of like the people that rallied to David during the cave of Adullam, the brokenhearted, the discontented, the discouraged, the down and out. Those are the people that in the cave there was a transformation that took place to where they became the mighty men that actually led the charge when he was coming to be king on the earth. And that's, that's ultimately what we see the Lord doing with all of us, is taking this messed up pile of stuff and turning it into something beautiful as he sees it to be beautiful. And so, we don't have to, in that process, we get delivered from, well, so-and-so doesn't think it's beautiful. Well, so-and-so is not the Lord, so we don't really care what so-and-so thinks, right? And even if you know or think yourself, I don't even think it's beautiful, but I know this is what the Lord's doing with me, then if your viewpoint differs from what his viewpoint is, then his goes and yours is wrong. If we have a choice, which is where we're going kind of in the Psalms, I wanted to highlight one of the Psalms in here, just to kind of bring out this back and forth nature. We've talked a lot about how Psalms, it's like a roller coaster ride. It's like that old nursery rhyme, when I was up, and when I was down, I was down, and when I was only halfway up, I was neither up nor down, right? Like that is the Psalms when you read them. Sometimes the Lord is the most amazing thing that has ever graced the face of the planet, and sometimes he has abandoned and forsaken him, and he is mad that, why haven't you come through for me, and the wicked people are prospering, and I'm over here like, why'd you abandon me again? And then 2 verses later, it comes back. And so this whole process of allowing the Lord, it says the kindness of the Lord leads us to repentance. So whenever we get a real picture of the goodness of the Lord in our life in this moment, it causes a repentance, not in a weird way, like a travailing weird, like, I can't believe I've messed up again, you need to help me.
Goodness.
Right. It's like a renewing, a transforming of the mind to be able to think the way that he thinks in a situation where naturally you would think very differently. That's what true repentance really looks like. That's why I know that the miracle working power of the Lord is a little bit different than the way I would have described it 15 or 20 years ago. Right. Now I know if people come in and their minds are transformed and they go out and actually live differently than they did before they came in, truly a miracle has taken place in our midst, because his power has come in and actually reformed and reshaped their identity to be able to live more how he sees them versus how they came in seeing themselves. So, so like Psalms 27, if you guys want to switch over there, I love how they term, they have like little subtitles or themes for the Psalms. And mine says on this one, an exuberant declaration of faith. Awesome. Right? So I'm thinking, man, this is going to be really good. And it starts off really good. It says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Yep. The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I be afraid? Right? And we all have those moments. We feel pretty invincible. Yeah. We're like, the Lord, man, he showed me a dream. He showed me a vision. He's got a purpose for my life. Yeah. Or maybe he saw you through a victory in an area, and all of a sudden you're jazzed up and you're like, man, I don't have to fear anything. Like, with the Lord on my side, I don't have anything to deal with.
Prayer room or whatever.
Yeah, he goes on. He's like, the wicked came up to eat my flesh, and they stumbled and fell. And though an army is encamped against me, I will not fear. Yeah. Which is that 2 Kings 6. Though war may rise against me, I'm going to be confident. And it's one thing I've desired, that I may seek, that I'll dwell in the house of the Lord all my days, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. In a time of trouble, he'll hide me in his pavilion, and in the secret place he'll hide me. He'll set me up high on a rock. He'll lift my head above my enemies, right? So he's surrounded by enemies in this moment, but he doesn't care about his enemies because he's enthralled with the goodness of the Lord and the faithfulness of the Lord that's going to cause his head to be lifted up above all of his enemies that are around. Yeah. He's going to sing. He's going to be happy. And then verse 7 hits. And you're like, did he write this all at one time? Or did he put his pen down in his journal because he was done for the day? Yeah. Right? We don't have the advantage of knowing this was this was May the 3rd, and then May the 4th, verse 7 came, right? Hear, O Lord, but it's a shift in the way he's articulating what's going on, the way he's processing. Hear, O Lord, when I cry, have mercy on me and answer me. And when you said, seek my face, I said, your face I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn away in anger. You have been my help, but do not leave me or forsake me. Right? So now it's like, man, I still believe that thing that I said in the first 6 verses, but I need some help here.
Yeah.
It's this honesty that comes out.
Yeah. The genuineness, yes.
When my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will take care of me. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me in a smooth path because of my enemies. Do not deliver me to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have arisen against me. So now we're starting to see the squeezing that's taking place, the pressure-packed situation that he's been put in, that's causing him to have this struggle between his soul and his spirit,
Right.
where the soul wants to take him in this direction because, he's having false
Fear,
accusation.
anxiety, yeah.
He's
Oh,
having
yeah.
people say the wrong thing about
Right.
him, right? And everything within him knows, man, they're not telling the
Right.
truth, and he wants justice, and he wants vindication, and he wants to be his own defense if the Lord's not going to be his defense, right? But ultimately, he still believes this thing that he's seen and experienced, and so he's caught between two worlds,
Yep.
but he's just honest enough to be able to try to describe it for our benefit. So it says, don't deliver me from the will of my adversaries, and false witnesses have arisen against me, and such as breathe out violence. And here's the key. Here's the turn. I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Now that verse right there just kind of provides the summation of that entire psalm, or that entire thought process, which is this moment of honesty, this moment of realization that if I don't put my faith in the thing that I've seen to be true before, or the things that I know about you, or the things that I've read about you in your promises and in your nature, if I go down this other road where my soul wants to take me, I'm done. I'm going to give up. I'm going to get lost. I'm going to go by the way, and I'm just going to end up on the side of the road, dead and bleeding, waiting for hopefully someone to come and pick me back up and breathe life into me. I would have lost heart unless I believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord, which means in that moment, he's not currently seeing the goodness of the Lord, right? There is this way to go, Lord, I'm frustrated with you right now, and I don't see your goodness right now. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know how long this is going to last. But in order to be sustained in this season, I'm going to place my hope and trust that by the time this is over, I will recognize your goodness that's been working for me the entire time.
So when we talked a little bit about this. You're right, because one of the things I was thinking about in my past is when I got into this situation, I started in my own strength, would even start praying, even doing whatever I want, whatever I was trained to do. By doing that, I was still missing his voice, because I became the voice of my own reason, and his voice got crowded out from my own. And then there was the other side where you could be in tranquility. We talked about you could be sitting outside hearing the birds chirping and everything and still not hear his voice. So it's about this genuine, honest relationship with the Lord that I'm hearing from you that really kind of helps me level back into the middle of where I need to be. Because if I'm not really genuine, if my heart is not really genuine to really have this relationship. Matter of fact, one of the things in here, I love verse 4, going back into the Passion Translation, before he gets to all this anxiety. It says, here's the one thing I crave from God, the one thing I seek above all else. I want the privilege of living with him every moment in his house, finding the sweet loveliness of his face filled with awe, delighting in his glory and grace. I want to live my life so close to him that he takes pleasure in my every prayer.
Absolutely. So it's almost
That's what I want,
It's
yes.
almost like his prayer got answered between the first half of the psalm and the second half of the psalm. It just came in a very different way than what he was picturing.
Exactly.
So when I read, one thing I desire, that I dwell in your house forever, and I get to experience all this stuff, you're like, this is great. I don't know, fluffy cloud, and there's going to be birds, and all this stuff. And then he gets the answer. He gets a taste of what it looks like to actually be able to have the opportunity to dwell in the house of the Lord.
Yes.
Right? And you're like, oh, man, the house of the Lord is pretty chaotic and tumultuous and dark. And I don't think you should run your house like this, Lord. I think your house should be a lot more just peaceful and tranquil, and all the things that we ascribe on a natural level. The way that what it really comes down to is when we experience something of the supernatural fruits of the Lord.
Yeah.
We think that they're supposed to be the way that we would describe the natural attributes of those exact same words.
Yep.
So supernatural peace is not natural peace.
Right.
Supernatural joy is not natural joy, right? If it was, it would just call it natural joy, right? So for it to be supernatural, it has to be different than the way that the majority of people would react to that very situation, whether they knew the Lord or not.
Yes.
Let's be honest, if you win the lottery, 10 times out of 10, you're going to operate in natural joy, right? Every single person, whether they know the Lord or not, is going to be joyful in that situation.
Right.
So that is natural joy. And not that there's anything wrong with natural joy, but there is a supernatural joy available. It's awful, but I think it's going to be really good. Right. And that's where you have this choice to make, where you have to, like you said, you have to be able to hear for the moment, these are the things that I would want to see happen. Let's just say business, right? We're both in business. We both have business connections. So let's say that my description to the Lord in a very psalm-like sense goes, in the natural, I want my business to survive and do well in the midst of this new landscape of environment of what's going on in the Carolinas and in Myrtle Beach right now, right? But I trust and believe that whether it continues to go well or whether it completely gets shut down and it dies, I believe that the enemy can't take it from me. I believe that I have submitted myself to you, so if you want it to survive, you're going to either give me the creativity, you're going to give me the ideas, you're going to send people to my path to sustain it, or we're going to go down the other way and go, okay, well, this season of this one is over. What's the next thing that you have for me? I'm not going to be stuck going, why did this thing die?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
So, well, okay, because, man, that was so good. So on the transition, I crave you, God, the one thing I seek above all else, living with him in every moment in his house. Those are the things that this person is saying in my heart. But the answer comes, okay, if you want that, you're going to have to go through some stuff because it's not, how often have we heard to know him, right? We want to know him. And then the power of his resurrection. But we forget, then it says, in the fellowship of his suffering. And there is a place or the sweet spot on that golf ball, too, when it clicks. It's that spot that when you're in that turmoil, you're in that place, the Lord speaks, his voice makes clarity to you, and you begin to get the understanding that is needed. Now, how many people do you think out there right now have had a lifestyle change so much they are finding new directions that they never thought they were going to go in?
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of, and it's so different for each person. That's why it's fundamentally important to understand what is the Lord speaking for you in this season, because there are people who the Lord is using this to transition out of something into a thing that maybe they've always wanted but not understood how to make the leap.
That's right.
There are other people who are tempted to throw all the balls up in the air and go, what's the meaning of life? And they're just supposed to stay on track with the thing that they've been doing for the last 5 years.
That's right.
There is no change in, he's not withdrawn his hand of favor on their business or their life.
That's right.
He wants them to stay steadfast and be consistent. And if you look at each other and you don't understand what you're supposed to be doing, when you see this person make this crazy, what we would call leap of faith or shift, and you see it work, you can be tempted to go, well, maybe I'm supposed to do that too. Where for you that would be sin, but for them that would be obedience.
That would be the red dot.
And so we have to be very careful with the way that we respond in seasons of being squeezed. What are we supposed to do to see this thing through? Not what is so and so doing? How is it working for them?
Right.
And I get it. When you try something and it works for you, out of a desire to see other people succeed, you want to tell them how you did it.
That's right.
But you're not really trying to tell them, do the same thing as me. You're just trying to say,
testimony,
man, I heard this from the Lord. It was weird. I tried it, and it worked. And that's, I think we've sanitized. When you mentioned to know the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, I mean, man, if we described what resurrection power looked like 15 or 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right? It's like he comes out, he's kicking butt, he's taking names, and everything's being subdued, and he's wrapping
Yeah.
it all up in a bow
Yeah.
for you, and he's laughing at everything as he goes. And then, but to understand the power of his resurrection, like, something has to be dead.
Yes.
Right? Right. But we don't think about us being the thing that's dead, or
Right.
anything in our sphere being dead.
Right.
We think of walking with this all-powerful, omnipotent Lord as he causes things that we come in contact with that are dead to not be dead anymore. But no way do we want
that's
to
right.
invite it into our own. We don't want a resurrection experience in our own life. We want to participate as he resurrects all those poor dead people out there that we come in contact with. Is that?
Oh,
and it's
absolutely.
a fundamental difference, because if you still think that his resurrection power is all to be doing all this stuff out here, but you never have to go through a death, then you are missing out on a real intimate moment of knowledge and experience of what the Lord's nature is really like.
Sure.
If you've never had the privilege of being dead in an area and allowing him to breathe it back to life.
One of the stories on that would be I remember in ministry and being through the system, the religion. I was one of those that you could say was someone I was a golf ball and I got sliced or maybe hooked. It doesn't matter. I landed in the woods very far away and someone didn't feel like going to get me, right? And so, but thank God people came in my life because of God's faithfulness. But while I was in the woods, that death was taking place. And I remember that I was going through this part. I just felt like I was treading water for so long. And I was just trying to keep my head from going under. And I clearly heard the Lord say to me, go under. I had to go under. And when I did, and I finally gave up, I finally quit wrestling with it, and I went under, I did not know the Lord would allow me to breathe underwater. I had no idea I could do that in the spirit, is what I'm trying to say. I've been, weird, but just saying that's how it was in my heart. And I was like, and when I finally came to that place of rest, because I quit striving to keep something alive that should have died. So I think that's another thing in our lives too. We want to help as a friend. We probably want to help sometimes when we should be letting people go ahead and hit the bottom. And that sounds rough. I know that's not a terrible thing. I'm not saying we don't want to see anybody fail, but sometimes it takes man to hit the bottom to get to that place where they can finally understand what God wants.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest things to navigate with the love and the care that we have for people is the difference between human compassion and the compassion of the Lord.
Yeah.
Because it still goes into not my will but yours be done. That it's in that umbrella, because in the natural, I would want to see this happen, right? And then you go, okay, Lord, what do you want to happen? And if we're not careful, we get into thinking we know what the Lord wants by what I call prophesy the opposite. Right?
Sure.
So again, our mind wanders. We get focused on what the bad thing is.
Right.
And let's be honest, if you want to see something bad, you can find it, and it's
yeah.
not very hard.
No.
And I promise you, when I think of areas of my life, it is right here going, hey, come down this trail for a while, right?
Old pictures, we talked about that.
Oh,
Looking
gosh,
back, yeah.
It's right here.
Yeah.
It's like, man, let's come
Yeah.
let's go sit in some regret for a while.
Yeah.
Let's go beat ourselves up a little bit about the way that we went through that season, or
Right.
the things that we should have done different. And
Yeah.
and this whole concept of, if I only knew then, what I know now, how much different would it be? Well, yeah, but you would have messed it up differently. So it's that's where there is always right here, right now, in a season where things are not at the conclusion, there's a way to go take this path, and within 2 steps, I have talked myself into feeling bad about something. And I have the right to do it, and if I explained it to some people that wanted to commiserate or sympathize with me, they could see it that way too.
Absolutely.
Which would validate my feelings.
Yeah.
It would make me feel like, man, you're right. I'm seeing this the right way. And
Yeah.
where's the
You'll
Lord?
collect a lot of people in your environment that feel the same way, actually.
Yeah, where's the Lord,
Yeah.
and where did he go, and why
Yeah.
are we doing this? But at the same time, there's invitation to go, man, I'm feeling this over here. That means that if the Lord is serving me, this is my enemy. And if the Lord is serving me a table in the presence of my enemies, it's like this: my head will be lifted up above my enemies all around me. So if he's the glory and the lifter of my head, then whenever I'm getting my head down and seeing all of the enemies that are right here, then there is a table and there's a perspective where he's wanting me to lift my head up towards him, because that's where my help comes from, and go, man, I'm feeling surrounded right now. I hate the way that I feel when I go down these paths. Can you show me a different path? Because if you don't open up something else for me, I feel like I'm going to go down one of these roads and end up in a much more tormented, beat up, shameful, guilty place. And it's going to take that much longer for me to come back around to land on the perspective of who you are, who I am, and how we're moving forward in this thing.
Because if not, you're going to control it all yourself.
Oh, man.
You're going to end up finding yourself controlling the situation until you finally get to the point where you can't do it anymore. You're either going to turn back to the Lord, or you're going to keep.
You know, I mean, especially when it's something that is near and dear to your heart, how many ideas do you think of ways that you could try to make that thing work?
Absolutely.
Right? And it doesn't even have to be for you. It could be for a friend. It could be for a loved one.
Yeah.
It could be for someone in the church, where you find out, man, this is in the natural, this really is a tough thing. This is a challenging spot. And then you go, okay, what am I supposed to do with it, right? And the answer is customized to the individual, which makes it both the beautiful and tormenting part of relationship with the Lord. It's an active, dynamic thing. So there may be someone here, let's just say there was a small business owner, right, that where the temptation would be, man, let's rally as many people as we can to go to their shop during this season to carry them through. And that could either be a word of wisdom from the Lord that helps sustain that person during this time, or it can be them having to go around the mountain again because we all acted out of human compassion trying to prop up something that was meant to fall.
That's right.
And that's where you can't just slap a label on it or a Band-Aid or just, box it in and say, every small business owner needs to really be supported right now. Like, that sounds good, and it sounds, that's one of the spots I have sensitivity for is, man, what is going on in this environment right now in the landscape of society that all these small business owners, man, I feel my compassion goes there, but if I'm not careful, I would be the one that goes, man, how do we prop all these people up?
Right.
And if I do that, I am serving love to one, and I'm serving an extended season of judgment to another out of my human will, going, man, we should really make this thing work.
For sure. For sure. I think the other day, the Lord, he had told me already to I have a routine. You wake up in the morning, you probably make your coffee. I don't know what your routines are. Spend some time with the Lord and the Word, maybe just hanging out, meditating. But then I would flip over to the news, put on my iPad, and man, after I would start reading it, I'm like, it's like everything I had just done had just got sucked out. And then I would find myself in this routine. I'm like, why am I doing this? And it's not that we're not supposed to, I'm not making a blanket statement that we're not supposed to watch the news or know what's going on.
Sure.
It was a routine in my life that he was breaking. He was saying, you know what? You're focusing on that dot of the news that right now is bringing in negativity. It's bringing in something in a season that you don't need right now. I'm trying to get my time with you personal. And so I recently I had to break away from that. Driving in my car from jobs and things, listening to, you only get, there's so many things you can listen to when I'm on the road all the time. Yeah. And so the news was, I had to turn that off again. Finding myself just driving in a car now with nothing but just me and the Lord, maybe just talking to him and hanging out with him. And in this moment of flourishing, if we'll actually do what you're saying, this genuineness, being authentic with him, really there is a life that's there, that's under the surface that can't be seen because of our own covering it up. We keep covering it up. But when we allow him to peel it back, allow it to flourish, it's been exciting. I've seen some really neat things. Lisa, can I share about your gardening and stuff? Is that okay? Nod? Yeah, okay. So through this time, we talked about the different things that the Lord's doing and the goodness through this. And so she is like nature herself. We've got a cardinal that's been at the house for going over a year now. He just sits at our window. He pecks at the window all day. The Lord spoke to her about that. She She has this ability with a calmness about her that when she goes places, people will say, you bring calm with you. And so we're at the house, and then all of a sudden we're sitting at the house. I say, hey, man, I'm going to go to Lowe's. Why don't you go with me, and let's look at some gardening stuff. And Lisa in the past has never really got into the garden to dig into the garden before, but I knew she would be great at it because she's just that kind of person. So we get to Lowe's, and she starts picking things out. We come home, we plant it, and I'm telling you, her plants are flourishing, right? Just they're green as green can be. We already have strawberries. I mean, things are already coming out, and I'm like, wow. I would always never be able to make it work that way. And all of a sudden, I come back home the other day, and there's like 6 more pots of new plants. So Lisa's been awakened to a new place of nurturing these plants and bringing peace into her life that she wouldn't have done before this trial. Because if she did what everybody else wanted her to do, she would never find that sweet spot. And so just to watch her awaken in this time, in this goodness, in this time of focusing on what God wants and not trying to do anything out of fear. The other thing is with Luke, my youngest son. He's a great kid, and one of the things for me, my family is so important in my heart that I love him so much. I want to spend as much time with I can. But he's 17 years old and he's a teenager, and so I'm trying to find ways to connect with him. And he's going into his senior year, and then I was just sitting there thinking about how the Lord just said, well, why don't you go up to him and ask if he wants to start a small business so he can taste what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Instead of sitting there telling Luke, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Even with our, we can say this with his friends, but when you're a parent, it's even harder not to control your children, and trying to shape them into what you want them to look like, more like us. And so being patient and having to wait on the Lord to hear. And I just happened to go and said, have you ever thought about maybe starting a business? He goes, yep. I said, okay. So waited it out. I mean, we're talking, this is like a 6-month process. This isn't like overnight. And then we got up to an opportunity for him to be able to just do some rescreening, because there's a lot of screens in Myrtle Beach. And I said, well, why don't we just do some rescreening if you want? I'll show you how. It's a real easy thing to do. He said, okay. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, these rescreening jobs are showing up at our house. And I went out yesterday with Luke, and we did our first job. And it's a small little job. But here's the thing for me. The sacrifice of giving my Saturday up was not a true sacrifice because I got to spend it with Luke. So it was like $1 million for me to spend half a day with my 17-year-old son doing a project together where he's learning a little entrepreneurial skills and walking alongside him. But it would have been very easy for me to tell him, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, where he doesn't even have a mind of his own. So there was a partnership that had to be awakened in him for him to say yes so he could grab it. Or if not, I'm going to be doing all the work and he's just going to be showing up. So he would begin to grab it. And I think in some ways it's a comparison of what we're talking about, allowing everybody to begin to go up in the way the Lord wants them to, in his timing, not trying to get ahead of the Lord. I know that you've had a great teaching before on the tares and the wheats, all the different things like that. But just giving time for the Lord to really develop in our people's lives. It's a true friendship to the Lord. Could you imagine? Man, if he wanted it tomorrow, I'd be dead. His patience for us, his compassion for us. And when you get to talking and teaching, I have so many stories that just bubble up in me that I want to bring up. And one more I'm going to bring up because I think it's pertinent. Going back into really being genuine and honest with the Lord and allowing it for other people so they can find their spot. Luke can find his spot. Lisa can find her spot. And this one is about a religious thing because we were trained in the past how we were supposed to pray and do different things. And Lisa and I just got married. We got into a head-on car collision, 60 miles an hour on Highway 90. When I came to, the engine was sitting on my lap. Lisa was screaming beside me, and we had just gotten married. We had just left church. We were in our church clothes, so no, that's not supposed to happen. We were probably praying, knowing us back then, all the way down 90 and talking and, doing our thing. And through that, she ended up having her pancreas totally crushed. We have x-rays still somewhere in the house that shows that the church did pray. And the miracle happened where her pancreas formed again, which is a great testimony. But the thing of the Lord was, he said basically was, yeah, you got a healing. You got a true bona fide healing, but I'm going to keep you in the hospital for another week or two longer than you want to be. And what happened was a little boil happened to develop on the pancreas, and they had to put a little hose, like a small little drip line in there. And I was fed up. Listen, I was just fed up. I was like, I am tired. I don't want this anymore. I don't know if any of y'all are out there feeling the same thing. I am fed up. And here I am, Lord, doing everything I was told to do. I'm praying the way I was trained to pray. I was praying for that healing. I was shouting it at times and saying, you will be healed. You will be healed. And we're going to leave this hospital. Well, I finally got wore out, went home, took a shower, got back in my living room, and just turned some worship music on. Just simply turned some worship music on and got real. And I sat on my sofa and just started crying a little bit and said, I can't handle this anymore. This is way too heavy. And through that, I heard him clearly say when the worship music was playing, stop worshiping healing. Just worship me. And when I did, he gave me a clear word of knowledge that I went back to the hospital, was able to share with Lisa, all of her cousins in the room. The doctor that she was at was snow skiing in Vail, Colorado. An intern comes in the room, it was on the weekend, and I said, my wife needs to go home tonight. They thought I was crazy. I started packing her bags. Packed her bags, intern comes in, he goes, oh really? He goes, let me look at her chart. She still had staples and a little hose in her. He goes, okay. He pulled these little clippers out, pulled the stitches out, pulled the hose out of her, and says, you're free to go home. Of course, all of our family members are at this point are going, because the Lord has spoken, not Mark, at this point. Because it was the trusting in the Lord through that survival mode, that frustration mode, trying to fix it myself. But at some point, I got real. At some point, I had to get genuine. Now, I don't want to be misleading to everybody and give you some big story, and that's supposed to happen to everyone, but it was a good story. And it kind of really encapsulizes, well, you know what I'm trying to say. It really helps with what we're trying to say today, that if we're genuine, he's our friend. I want to read this to you in Proverbs 18:20, where it says, a man that has friends must show himself friendly, and there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. And that's what he is. He is a true friend. He is there. He's trying to help us. He's trying to show us the white area and not the red dot. He's trying to show us what's really all available to us. He's trying to show us people in our life who are friends, who are trying to help us. They're coming to help us. And sometimes we don't like the package they're coming in. And we say return to sender. But the reality of it is, if I did not open my heart up with few people in my life, a handful of men in my life, that I would not be sitting here today with the freedom that I have in my heart if I did not humble myself and was genuine and shared my heart with them. There are people that have come that, I'll be honest with you, they were abrasive at first when I first met them. I didn't want to get to know them. I didn't want to, but as I allowed the friendship to grow, this trust began to come out of it. And I think where the Lord in my heart again is, someone walked me out of the woods. They took time to go get me in the woods and walk with me slow enough that they didn't try and fix me. They didn't try and put more stuff on me. They let me walk at the pace of the Lord and loved me all the way through. We got people still in this church like that. I was thinking about when we were with Jay and we went out to eat with Larry and Sharon not too long ago. And it was just a moment of, we haven't been able to hang out much, realizing how faithful they have been to this church, their family, and us, was enough to break me from the goodness of God and just sit there and go, we have more than our share. I could look at the red dot and I've missed that. It is so amazing to see what we really truly have around us. So I pray today that eyes are opened, that our eyes will open, our hearts will open. We will truly see what the Lord's goodness is for our life, people around us, and the goodness of God in them, and not focusing on the parts of them that are not going to bring peace, love, lovely things. That, Lord, we would see in every stranger, every person that has been made in the image of God, the goodness of God somewhere that we can partner with, that we'd have a new level of discernment, that our hearts would truly awaken to his love for one another.
Yeah, so if the red dot doesn't change, if it never goes away, there will always be some kind of red dot in your life. And whether whether we find ourselves feeling like that it's a lot of red dots. I mean, there are times that it's not just one. There may be 4 or 5, but training and conditioning our brain to see what the Lord is doing versus what we know the natural environment, what people are doing around us, understanding, yeah, that's okay, yeah, you're right. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We don't wrestle against this stuff. I'm going to stay connected to you. There are things that we know from the scriptures that we've heard that we have to put into practice over and over and over again. Yeah. That's why it's called practicing the presence of the Lord. It's because it takes discipline. It takes doing it when you don't want to do it. But that's kind of what you described here is that last sentence or the last verse in Psalms 27, because it says to wait on the Lord and be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. And what you described is waiting on the Lord is an active thing.
Yes.
It's not just I'm going to check out on the sidelines and fold my arms up, and wait until he comes and fixes it all for me. Yeah. This is an active posture of waiting. Sure. I'm going to continue to put one step in front of the other, and anytime that you go left, I'm going left. If you say go right, I'm going right. And in the absence of new direction, I'm going to continue to do the last thing that I know you told me to do. Right. And that's where we get tested when we're not sure, when we get disoriented, and we're not sure of our surroundings, and we're not sure we know where we're supposed to go, but we may not know where we are, right? Or either way, when we have a variable that comes in that we haven't found a landing spot for in our brain, we can get out of sorts or out of sync, and this is just saying refocus, rebalance, be of good courage, be faithful, be strong, understand that I'm with you, and wait on me to show you if you need to do something different. And in the absence of that, stay steadfast and continue to give yourself to the last thing that I spoke to you. And I think for a lot of us, when distractions come, we want to run to the Lord for a new update. Lord, I know you said this, last month, but is that still the thing? Or, man, did you know about this when you told me that? Yes. Which it sounds funny when I say it like that, but in our souls, we want to run to him for a new update or a confirmation or a keep going or you're on the right track or any of those kind of things. And in the absence of that, it's really difficult for us to continue to operate off the last thing that we knew he said.
Right.
And that's going to be the most important thing, as to be consistent and to be stable and steadfast in our walk with the Lord. We have to have that consistency that I believe that you have the ability to lead me into all truth more than the enemy has to lead me into a deceived place. Right. And so, absent of new information from you, I'm going to continue to operate off of what I know you spoke to me over here. Yeah. Whether I like how I think it's playing out, whether I see that it's going to a good conclusion, I'm going to stay faithful to the last thing that you gave me, knowing that if you want to give me something different, you can do it at any time, because I'm open and I'm waiting on you. I'm open to you. I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm not afraid to continue to ride off of what you did say if you're not saying anything else.
Absolutely, because you're still going to have faith. You're still going to have faith. That's good. All right. Well, good. Talking to our 3 people in the audience. So I think at this point you opened up with how easy it really was for us to just whisper his name. Just go and stop thinking about the dot and just go and say, Lord, okay, here I am. Really that simple. That's how you open this thing up. And I think it's so simple that religion complicates it. But it is so simple that he wants to be our friend. He is such an amazing God, a God that loves us so much that he humbles himself, humbler than I could ever try to be, just so that I can see another revelation of who he is. Just so this golf ball was not by accident that I looked at my car while we're talking about this, and it's beside my car. These things you can't make up, but they're these little breadcrumbs along the way that says, yes, I'm a God that is alive. I'm not dead. I am your friend. I am everything. I'm your plan. If you'll partner with me and have union with me, you will have life, and you will have it truly more abundantly. So I pray today, as we're closing this conversation out, I just pray today that eyes are opened, ears hear, and hearts are awakened to the message that was shared today about genuineness, that being genuine with the Lord, coming back to a place of being honest with him, allowing him to become the one who calls the shots instead of us. Also being faithful to those that God has connected us with, that may be some of these golf balls, the ones that are been left out in the woods and have been weathered. Would we be willing as a church to truly awaken and no longer wait for just leadership to be the ones that they expect to fix everything? Would you be faithful to the ones that he sent you, the ones that are close to you, the ones that are in your surrounding area, the ones that you have yet to meet tomorrow, the ones that he wants to send to you, that we would be so focused on him that the dot won't make us miss the surface area around us, so God can do what he needs to do on this earth. So, Lord, we just thank you again. We praise you. We just give you all the glory today. We thank you, Lord, that in everything and for everything, because we know you are for us and not against us. So we bless everybody watching today. We thank you for taking time to watch. Is there anything we need to do on the way out? Okay. And we just want to thank also everyone for the food drive. It was very successful for the helping for kids. Lisa found herself with Luke, my youngest son, driving a half a day around, just getting food out to people's houses. They just asked her today, she would jump in, and they were just driving from house to house throughout the day, delivering food. But I want to thank the whole church, everyone, whether at our church or not. We want to thank everybody for helping make that successful. Outside of that, next week, we're still going to do this at 10:30 online until we hear otherwise. And want to thank everybody again. All right.